Have you ever noticed something strange? The moment you tell people about a beautiful plan, something begins to change. The excitement fades, the energy drops, and suddenly, the dream that once felt powerful starts feeling fragile. It's not always because people are evil. Sometimes it's doubt, sometimes jealousy, sometimes their own fears speaking through them. But the damage is real. A wise person once said, "Not everything in your life needs an audience." Today I want to share 6 things you must stop sharing immediately if you want peace, progress, and power in your life. And the third one is the one most people get wrong. The first key point is stop sharing your big goals too early. Because the moment a dream is spoken too soon, it often begins to lose the quiet power that helps it grow. Think about a seed planted deep in the soil. You cannot see it, you cannot hear it. Nothing impressive is happening on the surface. But underneath, life is forming. Roots are pushing through darkness, slowly, patiently. Now imagine someone digging up that seed every day just to show people, look, this is going to be a big tree one day. What happens? The seed never becomes a tree. Many dreams suffer the same fate. The moment they are exposed too early, they stop growing naturally. They start living under the pressure of opinions, questions, and expectations. Suddenly, your beautiful idea is no longer yours, it belongs to the crowd. Have you noticed how quickly people react when you share a big goal? You say, "I'm thinking of starting my own business." And within 5 seconds, someone becomes a financial expert. "Oh, that's risky. Most businesses fail. Do you even have experience?" One uncle you have not seen in 10 years suddenly appears with statistics from 1997. A friend reminds you of a cousin who tried something similar and now sells insurance door to door. And just like that, a tiny crack appears in your confidence. The dream that once felt exciting now feels like it needs approval. It feels like it needs permission. But something deeper is happening inside your brain too. And this part is fascinating. When you tell people about your big plan, they often respond with praise. "Wow, that's amazing. You're going to do great. I'm proud of you." Now listen carefully. Your brain cannot always tell the difference between talking about success and actually achieving success. That small burst of praise releases the same feel-good chemicals that real progress would release. For a moment, your mind thinks mission accomplished. So, the hunger to work becomes weaker. The urgency to act becomes softer. You celebrated the victory before the race even began. A young man once told everyone he was writing a book. He posted about it, talked about it at dinners, mentioned it in every conversation. "My book is coming soon," he would say proudly. People loved the idea. They encouraged him. Months passed, then a year, then 2 years. One day a friend finally asked, "How is the book going?" The young man laughed and said, "Honestly, I haven't written past page 12. The applause for the idea had quietly replaced the discipline required to finish it. The dream had been shared with the world before it had learned how to stand on its own legs. And then there is another side to this, a funny one. Human beings are naturally curious creatures. The moment you announce a big goal, people become unofficial project managers. You say you want to get fit. Suddenly everyone asks, "Did you go to the gym today?" You say you are learning a new skill. Someone asks for progress updates every weekend. You start a side business and that one friend messages you every week, like a strict school teacher. So, how is the company going? Now instead of focusing on the work, you are managing everyone's expectations. You spend energy explaining the journey instead of actually walking the path. Quiet progress has a strange kind of magic. When fewer people know about your plans, something powerful happens inside you. Your focus becomes sharper. Your motivation becomes more personal. You are no longer chasing approval. You are chasing growth. It becomes a private conversation between you and your effort. No noise, no unnecessary commentary. Just work, learning, failing, adjusting, improving. The silence becomes your ally. The fewer announcements you make, the more room your dream has to breathe. Think about the greatest transformations in life. They rarely begin with loud declarations. The student who suddenly becomes excellent in class did not announce it months earlier. The person who loses 40 pounds did not call a press conference before the first workout. The entrepreneur who launches a successful product did not broadcast every late night and every mistake. Most real success grows quietly, almost secretly. One day people look at you and say, "Wow, when did that happen?" And you smile a little because the answer is simple. It happened during all the quiet days when no one was watching, when the dream was still protected, when it was still yours. The second key point is stop sharing your financial situation, because the moment people know too much about your money, they often stop seeing you and start seeing numbers. Money is strange. Quiet pieces of paper, silent digits on a screen, yet they have the power to change how people behave around you. You could be the same person you were yesterday, same smile, same heart, same character. But the moment someone hears that you earn a lot or very little, their mind quietly rearrange the way they look at you. Suddenly they are not listening to your words anymore. They are calculating, measuring, comparing, and this happens faster than you think. It is almost automatic, like a reflex. Imagine two people sitting at the same dinner table. They laugh together, share stories, enjoy the evening. Everything feels natural. Then someone casually says, "By the way, he makes $500,000 a year." Watch what happens. The conversation shifts. Some people become overly respectful. Some become slightly uncomfortable. One person suddenly remembers an investment opportunity they want to discuss, and another quietly thinks, "Wow, must be nice." Nothing about the person changed, only the information changed. But that small piece of information now sits in the room like an invisible guest, influencing everything. And the opposite is also true. When people believe you are struggling financially, something else begins to happen. Some people start treating you with quiet pity. Others may begin offering advice you never asked for. Suddenly, everyone becomes a budget expert. "You should save more. Why don't you try this job? My cousin doubled his income with crypto." Amazing? The same friend who cannot manage his own phone battery suddenly becomes a financial mentor. You smile politely, but inside you are thinking, "Brother, you still owe me lunch from 2018. Money information often invites unnecessary expectations. Tell people you are doing well financially, and slowly the requests begin. It starts small. "Hey, can you cover dinner this time?" Then it grows. "Could you help me with a small loan?" Then one day, someone says, "You're doing well anyway. What's a little help?" And now a simple detail about your finances has quietly turned into emotional pressure. The relationship that once felt light now carries invisible weight, and you realize something important. The less people know about your money, the more natural your relationship. P.S. remain. There was a man who ran a small business in his town. For years he lived a simple life. Modest car, simple clothes, friendly with everyone. Then one day, someone discovered that his company had grown a lot. The rumor spread faster than free pizza in an office. Suddenly, people who had not called him in years began inviting him for coffee. Old classmates reappeared like long-lost relatives. Even distant family members developed a sudden interest in catching up. The man later laughed and said something very honest. Before people knew about my money, they wanted my friendship. After they knew, they wanted my wallet. Privacy protects peace. When your financial situation stays quiet, something beautiful happens. People interact with you based on your character, your kindness, your presence, not your bank balance. They laugh with you because they enjoy your company. They respect you because of how you treat others, not because they imagine what your paycheck might look like. And that kind of respect, that kind of connection is far more valuable than money itself. Think about it this way. Your finances are like the foundation of a house. Strong foundations are important, but nobody walks into a home and says, "Wow, show me your concrete structure." People admire the warmth inside the house, the atmosphere, the people, the conversations. The foundation quietly does its job in the background. It supports everything, but it does not need to be displayed. In the same way, your financial life should support your life, not become the headline of it. And sometimes, silence about money is simply wisdom, because money flows. It rises, it falls. Some years are abundant, some years are difficult. Life moves in seasons. When too many people know your financial details, every change becomes public news. If you succeed, someone feels envy. If you struggle, someone whispers, out it. But when your finances remain private, those seasons stay between you and your journey. Quiet, protected, peaceful, and you are free to grow, adapt, recover, and succeed without an audience counting every dollar along the way. The third key point is stop sharing your past with everyone, because pain is powerful, but when it is placed in the wrong hands, it can quietly turn into gossip, judgment, or silent misunderstanding. Every human being carries invisible weight. Some carry worries about their family. Some carry regrets from the past. Some carry fears about the future that they rarely say out loud. Life is not always easy, and sometimes the heart simply needs to talk. That urge is natural. When something hurts inside, the mind starts searching for relief. It whispers, "Tell someone, maybe it will feel lighter," and often it does. But here is the delicate truth. The relief depends on who is listening. Not everyone has the heart, the maturity, or the kindness to hold someone else's struggle with care. Think of your struggles like fragile glass. When held by the right person, that glass is protected. It is handled gently. It is respected. But place that same glass in careless hands, and suddenly it becomes a spectacle. Some people do not mean harm, yet they treat your pain like an interesting story. "Oh wow, really? What happened next?" Their curiosity is louder than their compassion. And later, without even realizing it, they repeat your story somewhere else. Not out of cruelty, sometimes just out of habit. And suddenly, the thing you trusted them with quietly travels from ear to ear like a wandering rumor. There was a woman who once shared a difficult moment from her life with a coworker. She simply needed someone to listen. A few weeks later, she walked into the office kitchen and noticed two people lowering their voices when she entered. The atmosphere felt strange. Something had changed. Later, she discovered that her personal story had been shared, slightly edited, slightly dramatized, like a movie trailer that became more exciting with every retelling. The woman said something very wise afterward. She said, "My mistake was not trusting someone. My mistake was trusting the wrong room. Sometimes people listen to your struggles, but instead of empathy, they offer comparison. You say you are feeling overwhelmed. Immediately, someone says, "You think that's bad. Listen to what happened to me." Now your pain has entered a competition. Suddenly, it feels smaller, dismissed, or misunderstood. You walk away thinking, maybe I shouldn't have said anything at all. And yet, this happens so often in daily conversation. People are not always trained to listen, they are trained to respond. And then there is another type of listener, the quiet collector. This person listens very carefully, they nod, they seem understanding, but deep inside they are storing information. Not because they plan to help you, but because information is power. One day during a disagreement, that same person might bring your vulnerability back into the conversation like a weapon. Well, you're the one who said you can't handle pressure. Suddenly, your private struggle becomes public ammunition. That moment teaches a painful lesson. Openness without discernment can be risky. But here is something equally important. This does not mean you should carry everything alone. Silence is not always strength. Humans are not designed to suffer in isolation like lonely mountains. We need support. We need understanding. The real wisdom lies in selective sharing, finding those rare people whose presence feels safe, the ones who listen without interrupting, the ones who do not rush to judge, fix, or compare. They simply hold space, like a calm harbor where you brute, raw storm can rest for a while. Sometimes that safe listener is a close friend, sometimes a mentor, sometimes a family member who has seen enough of life to understand that everyone struggles. And occasionally, it may even be a professional guide who knows how to listen without turning your story into a dinner conversation later. When you speak to someone like that, something magical happens. Your struggle does not shrink because it was dismissed. It becomes lighter because it was understood. There is also a quiet strength in learning to process certain struggles privately. Not every thought needs a microphone. Not every difficult day needs an audience. Some emotions are like passing clouds. They move through the sky of your mind and disappear if you simply give them time. Have you noticed this? A problem that felt huge at midnight suddenly feels manageable the next morning. But if you had shared that midnight panic with 10 people, now 10 different opinions are chasing you the next day. And sometimes humor helps us see this clearly. Think about that friend who shares every small problem online. Bad day today, feeling stressed. Life is complicated. After the fifth post, people stop asking what happened. They just scroll past thinking, "Ah, yes, the daily episode of Emotional Weather Report." The intention may be genuine, but constant broadcasting of struggles slowly drains their meaning. Real pain deserves real listening, not quick reactions and emoji sympathy. Your struggles are part of your story, but they are also part of your healing. They deserve careful handling. They deserve thoughtful sharing. When you choose your listeners wisely, your pain becomes a bridge to connection. When you share it carelessly, it can become noise in rooms that were never meant to hold it. And the difference between those two experiences often decides whether your heart feels supported or quietly exposed. The fourth key point is stop sharing your family conflicts publicly. Because when private storms inside a home are displayed outside, the rain may stop, but the mud often remains. Every family has moments that are messy. Voices rise. Opinions clash. Someone feels unheard. Someone feels misunderstood. This is not unusual. It is part of being human. A family is not a perfectly organized meeting room. It is more like a living room full of personalities, emotions, memories, and sometimes a little chaos. But the moment those internal disagreements are carried outside the home and placed in front of strangers, something delicate begins to break. The issue may be temporary, but the impressions people form can become permanent. Imagine a small crack in the wall of a house. Inside the house, the family knows the crack appeared during a storm. They understand the context. They know the repair will happen soon. But if you take a photograph of that crack and show it to the entire neighborhood, suddenly everyone becomes a building inspector. Some will exaggerate it. Some will whisper about it. One person will say, "That house is falling apart." Another will add, "I heard there are many problems inside." The crack was small, but public attention made it look like a collapse. Something similar happens when family disagreements are discussed openly with outsiders. When you tell someone, "My brother and I argued," or "My parents don't understand me," the listener only receives a small fragment of a much larger story. They do not see the years of love, the sacrifices, the shared memories, the quiet support that exist between those moments of conflict. They hear one chapter and sometimes they decide the entire book from that chapter. There was a young man who often complained about his father to friends. Every small disagreement became a story during dinner. "See, on conversations, my dad is so controlling," he would say. "He never listens." His friends heard these stories for months. Slowly, without realizing it, they built a very negative image of the father. One day the young man invited those same friends to his home. They met the father. He was calm, kind, respectful. Later one friend said quietly, "Your father seems like a good man." The young man paused for a moment and realized something. The stories he shared had created a version of his father that was not completely true. Family conflicts are emotional, and when emotions are high, the urge to vent becomes very strong. It feels good to release the frustration. You tell someone what happened, and for a moment you feel lighter. But often, the conflict inside the family resolves much faster than the stories outside the family. Two siblings may argue fiercely today and laugh together tomorrow. A parent and child may disagree in the morning and hug in the evening. But the outsider who heard the story yesterday is still holding yesterday's version of the relationship. And here is where things become complicated. When outsiders develop strong opinions about your family members, those opinions rarely disappear easily. Even after the problem is solved, they continue to see your brother as the difficult one, your sister as the selfish one, or your parents as the strict ones. Meanwhile, inside the family, forgiveness may have already happened. Understanding may have already grown, but the outside world continues to hold on to the old image, like a photograph frozen in time. Sometimes, humor can help us notice this pattern. Think about that relative who shares every family disagreement in the group chat. One moment they are announcing, "I'm never speaking to him again." 2 days later, they post a photo together eating dessert. Everyone reading the messages feels like they are watching a reality show. Episode 1, Family Drama. Episode 2, Family Reconciliation. And somewhere in the background, a confused cousin is wondering whether to bring popcorn or counseling advice. A family is not perfect. It is a living system of emotions and growth. Inside the home, people learn, change, apologize, and forgive. But when those moments of conflict are constantly shared outside, the natural healing process becomes harder. Words spoken in frustration travel far. They stay longer than the anger that created them. They become stories told by people who were never present during the full experience. Protecting family dignity does not mean pretending problems do not exist. It simply means choosing carefully where those problems are discussed. Some conversations belong in the living room, not in the marketplace. Some disagreements need patience, not publicity. When conflicts stay within the circle of those who truly understand the family dynamic, they often resolve with more compassion and less judgment. And when the outside world sees your family, they see something stronger than a temporary disagreement. They see unity, they see respect, they see a group of people who handle their storms quietly, repair their cracks patiently, and continue building something that outsiders can observe but never fully understand from the outside. The fifth key point is stop sharing every good deed you do, because the moment kindness becomes a performance, it slowly loses the quiet beauty that made it meaningful in the first place. There is something deeply powerful about doing good for someone and letting the moment remain between two hearts. No audience, no announcement, no applause, just a simple act of kindness moving quietly through the world like a gentle breeze. But today we live in a time where even generosity sometimes feels like it needs a camera. Someone helps a stranger, and the first instinct is not to reflect on the moment, but to record it, post it, caption it, share it. Suddenly, the kindness that once felt pure now carries a small question in the background. Was this done to help or to be seen helping? This does not mean people who share their good deeds have bad intentions, not always. Many people simply want to inspire others. They want to spread positivity, and sometimes that does happen. But there is a delicate line between inspiration and exhibition. When every act of generosity becomes a story told loudly, the focus slowly shifts away from the person being helped and moves toward the person doing the helping. The spotlight changes direction, and kindness, which once felt humble and quiet, begins to stand on a stage it never asked for. Think about the kindest person you have ever known in your life. Maybe it was a teacher, maybe a grandparent, maybe a neighbor who quietly supported people around them. Now ask yourself something simple. Did that person constantly talk about their kindness? Probably not. In fact, many truly generous people feel slightly uncomfortable when their good deeds are mentioned. They change the topic. They laugh it off. They say something like, "Oh, it was nothing." But deep inside, it was something. And somehow that humility makes the act feel even bigger. A small story comes to mind. A man once paid for a stranger's meal in a restaurant. The stranger never knew who did it. The waiter only smiled and said, "Someone here wanted to take care of it." The man who paid quietly left the restaurant before the stranger could find him. Later that evening, he told a friend about the moment, and the friend asked, "Why didn't you tell him it was you?" The man laughed and said, "Because then the moment would become about me, and it wasn't supposed to be." There is also a funny side to this hobby of announcing every good deed. Sometimes people help someone and then describe the story so many times that the original act starts sounding like a heroic movie scene. So there I was, the only one brave enough to step forward. By the fifth retelling, you start wondering if background music was playing and pigeons were flying dramatically in slow motion. Humor aside, the human mind enjoys recognition. We all like to feel appreciated. But when recognition becomes the main fuel behind kindness, something subtle changes inside us. Real generosity grows stronger when it is practiced quietly. It becomes part of your character. Instead of a moment you display, it shapes the way you treat people when no one is watching. You help someone carry a heavy bag. You listen patiently to someone who needs to talk. You support a person who feels alone. None of these moments require an announcement. They simply exist, and their impact travels further than we realize. And here is something interesting about quiet kindness. It has a ripple effect that often remains invisible. The person you helped may later help someone else. That second person may pass the kindness forward again. A chain begins to form, and the original act continues moving through lives you will never meet. If the act had been done only for public recognition, that ripple might have been smaller. But when kindness is sincere, it multiplies in ways that cannot be measured. Sometimes the most meaningful acts of generosity happen in places where no audience could even exist. A parent staying awake at night worrying about their child. A friend checking in when someone seems unusually quiet. A person forgiving someone who hurt them deeply. These are not dramatic moments. There is no applause waiting at the end. Yet these actions carry immense emotional weight. Doing good quietly also protects something inside your own here. It keeps your intentions clean. It reminds you that kindness is not a performance, it is a habit. It is the small voice that says, help if you can. Not because anyone will praise you, not because it will make you look good, but because it is simply the right thing to do. And when kindness comes from that place, it carries a quiet strength that does not need validation from the world around it. The sixth key point is stop sharing your next move. Because when your plans travel ahead of your actions, they often lose the quiet focus that turns intention into reality. There is a special kind of strength in silence, not the silence of fear, but the silence of preparation. Think about a bow being pulled before an arrow is released. The tension builds quietly. Nothing dramatic is happening yet, but inside that still moment, energy is gathering. Direction is forming. Precision is being decided. Now imagine announcing the arrow's destination to everyone before even pulling the string. Suddenly people begin offering directions. Aim a little left. What everything offering directions, aim a little left. Why not shoot somewhere else? Are you sure that target is worth it? Before long, the arrow hasn't even left the bow, but the mind holding it has already become crowded. Many people share their next move because they feel excited. That excitement is beautiful. It means something inside you is waking up. You want to tell someone, I'm about to start something new. Maybe a new career path, a business idea, a personal transformation. And for a moment it feels good to say it out loud. But the moment those words leave your mouth, they begin traveling through other people's minds. Some will support you, which is wonderful, but others will analyze, question, doubt, or unintentionally plant hesitation in your thinking. There was a man who wanted to open a small coffee shop, nothing huge, just a cozy place where people could sit, read, and relax. One evening he mentioned the idea during a gathering with friends. Within minutes the room became a business conference. One friend said, the coffee industry is very competitive. Another added, rent is expensive. Someone else asked about marketing strategies, licensing requirements, and profit margins. By the end of the evening, the man felt mentally exhausted. The dream that felt warm and simple in his mind now felt like a complicated puzzle, and he hadn't even started yet. Sometimes people are not trying to discourage you, they are simply projecting their own fears. Someone who has been hurt by failure may warn you about every possible risk. Someone who once tried something similar may share their difficult experience. Their story is real, but it is not necessarily your story. Yet when you hear enough caution before you even take the first step, your excitement begins to shrink. The energy that should have gone into action slowly gets spent in conversation. There is also a strange psychological effect that happens when we repeatedly talk about future plans. Talking can create the illusion of progress. You describe the idea so vividly that it almost feels like you have already moved forward. Friends say, that sounds amazing. They admire the plan, and your brain quietly receives the emotional reward of accomplishment. without the physical work that would normally create it. It is like celebrating the finish line while still sitting on the couch tying your shoes. Quiet action carries a different kind of power. When fewer people know what you are building, your focus becomes sharper. There are fewer voices competing for space in your mind. The project becomes personal, almost sacred. You wake up thinking about the work, not about how you will explain the work to others. Your attention goes into learning, experimenting, adjusting. Mistakes happen, of course, but those mistakes happen privately, giving you the freedom to correct them without feeling watched. And sometimes the results become far more exciting when they appear unexpectedly. Imagine meeting a friend you haven't seen in a year. Last time you met, they were quietly working on improving their health. They never posted about it, never announced it. And now suddenly you see them stronger, happier, transformed. You ask, when did this happen? They smile and say, I've just been working on it. That moment carries a kind of quiet respect that loud announcements rarely achieve. There is also a funny side to this. Everyone knows someone who announces a big new project every few months. January brings a new business idea. March brings a new podcast plan. July introduces a revolutionary fitness routine. By October, even their dog looks confused about which journey is currently happening. The announcements were enthusiastic, but the consistency never arrived. When plans are spoken too early and too often, they sometimes become temporary excitement rather than sustained effort. Moving quietly does not mean hiding from the world. It simply means protecting the fragile, early stage of creation. Just like a candle flame needs protection from strong wind, new plans need protection from too many opinions. Let the idea grow stronger inside your routine. Let discipline replace discussion. Let progress happen, step by step, day by day, quietly shaping the direction of your life while the outside world continues its noise. And somewhere along that quiet journey, something remarkable begins to happen. Your actions start speaking louder than your plans ever could. People notice the results first and only later learn about the path that created them. The conversation shifts from "What are you planning?" to "How did you do that?" And by then, the work has already been done, the arrow has already been released, traveling steadily toward the target you chose long before anyone else knew where you were aiming. The seventh key point is stop sharing your deepest personal boundaries, because the moment people clearly see the invisible lines that protect your peace, some will respect them, but others will quietly start testing how far they can push. Every person has emotional borders, quiet lines inside the heart that say, this is where my peace begins, and this is where I need space. These boundaries are not walls of anger. They are fences of self-respect. But something interesting happens when we explain every one of these boundaries in detail to everyone around us. Some people understand and honor them, but others, intentionally or not, begin studying those lines the way a curious child studies a fence. They start asking, how strong is it? Can I step over it just once? Maybe just a little? Imagine a peaceful garden, beautiful flowers, calm pathways, fresh air. Around the garden is a simple fence. Most visitors respect it naturally. They walk through the gate, enjoy the space, and leave with appreciation. But if someone begins announcing, this part of the fence is weak, this section can easily be opened, and over a dushit, yeah, the gate sometimes stays unlocked, what happens next? Some visitors remain respectful, but a few will start experimenting, not always out of malice, sometimes simply because the opportunity exists. In relationships, this happens quietly. A person might say, I really dislike being called late at night unless it's urgent. At first, everyone understands. At first, everyone understands. But over time, someone calls at midnight with a small question. Sorry, I know you said not to call late, but this will only take a minute. Another time, someone interrupts your quiet time because they know you are too polite to say no. Slowly, gently, almost invisibly, the boundary begins to shift, and suddenly the peaceful garden inside your life feels a little more crowded than it should. There was a young woman who always explained her boundaries clearly to everyone. She would say, I don't like people asking me about my personal life, or I need weekends completely free for myself. Her intentions were healthy, she wanted balance, but something interesting happened. Certain people began treating those boundaries like a challenge. Coworker would say with a playful smile, come on, just tell me a little about your dating life. Another friend would say, you deserve to relax, but you could help me just this one Saturday. Slowly, her peaceful weekends disappeared. Not everyone tests boundaries deliberately. Sometimes people simply follow patterns. If they see that you often bend your limits to keep others comfortable, they begin expecting it. Human behavior is like water, it flows wherever the path is easiest. If your boundaries are explained too much but enforced too little, people may hear the words, but they watch the actions. And actions speak much louder than careful explanations. There is also a quiet wisdom in letting some boundaries exist without long speeches. Think about the calm confidence of someone who simply lives their limits without constant discussion. They do not announce every rule of their personal life. They do not debate their need for space. They simply act accordingly. When it is time to rest, they rest. When something feels uncomfortable, they step back politely. No drama, no lengthy justification, just a steady sense of self-respect. And strangely, people tend to respect those quiet boundaries more. Not because they were explained perfectly, but because they were demonstrated consistently. A person who protects their time calmly teaches others how to treat that time. A person who politely declines things that drain them sends a clear signal without needing a long explanation. The message becomes simple and clear: this space matters. There is even a humorous side to this. Think of that friend who announces every new boundary with a long motivational speech. From today forward, I am protecting my energy, they declare dramatically. Everyone nods. 2 days later, someone asks them for a favor at 11 p.m. and they reply, but just this once. By the third, just this once, the boundary has quietly packed its bags and moved to another city. True boundaries are not loud declarations. They are quiet habits. They are choices repeated calmly over time. When you live them, instead of constantly explaining them, something interesting happens. People begin adjusting their behavior naturally. They sense the rhythm of your life. They learn where your time, your peace, and your emotional energy are protected, not because you delivered a long speech about it, but because the way you live makes those lines clear without needing many words. There is a quiet wisdom in knowing what deserves to be shared and what deserves to be protected. Not everything meaningful in your life needs an audience. Some things grow stronger in silence. Your dreams, your plans, your straw, uglas, your kindness, your peace. These are not performances for the world. They are parts of your inner life, the private workshop where your character is being built every single day. When you learn to speak less about certain things, something interesting happens. Your energy stops leaking outward. It stays with you, it begins working for you. Instead of explaining your path again and again, you start walking it. Instead of defending your choices, you start living them. quietly, steadily. And people will notice, not because you announced every step, but because your life slowly begins to change. The truth is, the strongest people are often the calmest ones in the room. They are not constantly explaining themselves, they are not broadcasting every move. They carry their plans quietly. They protect their peace carefully. They understand that some things are too valuable to expose to every opinion that passes by. Silence, when used wisely, is not weakness, it is focus. It gives your ideas time to grow roots. It gives your character space to mature. It allows your actions to speak in ways that words never could. So, as you move forward in your life, remember this gentle principle: not everything that happens inside you needs to be spoken outside of you. Let some victories arrive without announcement. Let some growth happen quietly. Let some kindness remain unseen. Let some plans unfold in private. Because the most meaningful transformations in life rarely begin with noise. They begin in quiet moments, with quiet decisions made by a person who understands that true strength does not always need to be heard. Sometimes it only needs to be lived.